righty. All right, everybody. Well, I'm going to get rocking and rolling. I'm sure some more people will pop in just a second. I hope your sessions so far have been worth your time, and hoping that one for this one as well. Just so you know who I am, and excuse me, all of that it meant people, where I'm at. So my name is Rachel Horn, Rachel throughout, and I am the teaching and learning coach at Glen Elementary. So feel free to contact me anytime. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. People pop in. For my people that have just popped in, sorry y'all, a lot of poppers. I'm going to share those slides again. For those of you that have just popped in, just share the slides with you again in the chat. Okay. All right. Okay, everybody. All right. So we're going to get rolling. So today's session, I'll give you a little story. So my husband and I moved to the Durham area about a little over a year ago. We're both from South Carolina, so not too far. And my point in saying this is the district I'm coming from, or my experience, we started a one-to-one district about 7 years ago. And with that one-to-one district, sort of similar to what you guys have going on, TPACK was a huge thing, and a conversation and a language that we had just a huge influx of as we added the one-to-one component. But what was sort of interesting about that time was TPACK became less about what TPACK really is and more about tech exposure. So exposing people to all different types of new technology. And that's fantastic. Don't get me wrong, like new tech is great and as many tools as we can have is wonderful. But I was sort of thinking for this session, you know, we're just coming back from a pandemic. Like we've been exposed to so many tech tools. Like how many of you can, I feel like I've had a tech tool overload last year, right? And so today's session is going to be focused on using the tech exposure that you already had. Okay, some of those tech tools that you've accrued over the last year, and I'm sure over the last few years, and making the most of them. Okay, so that's where we're going. So when we talk about session goals, again, we're going to be talking about recycling tools that are high exposure tools, Nearpod, Padlet, Google products, things like that, right? And we're going to be talking too specifically about how all of this applies to assessment. And then our final focus is going to be when we think about children furthest from justice. So that's a big thing this year in the district. I'm sure you've already heard it probably again and again, but how are we having a critical lens around everything we're doing and how it's affecting our children that are furthest from justice? So that equity conversation. So that's where we're going again today. Thinking about TPACK with assessment, recycling tools. So we're not using brand new tools, we're using old tools and making the most of them, and talking about how we can have a lens around equity when it comes to TPACK. Okay. So before we get rocking and rolling with this conversation, I just want to do a brief refresher on what TPACK actually is. And I'm sure you've probably done a deep dive already and got a lot of exposure already today. But I want to play like a minute-long video that's as concrete as it can get. And then we'll do a dive for 2 to 3 minutes in the district's products on TPACK, so you kind of just know where they're at. And then we'll talk a little about it. Okay. Please holler at me or send me a chat or whatever if you can't hear any of this, but hopefully.
What is teaching? Let's start with content knowledge. What is teaching? Let's start with content knowledge. This is the information on the subjects we teach. It includes disciplines such as mathematics, science, art, and music. But being an expert in a field does not necessarily equate to being a good teacher. We also need pedagogical knowledge, which is the art of teaching. It includes things such as taking into consideration learning styles, differentiating instruction, creating classroom environment, and assessment practices. Basically, it's your philosophy of education. Teachers also need technological knowledge, which is the teaching tools.
Exposure.
Today, most people's immediate thoughts are of modern technologies. However, it can be as simple as a pen or a calculator. Content knowledge, pedagogy, and technology can be imagined in 3 overlapping circles. The middle area is known as TPACK. Technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge. But is all this knowledge beyond our reach? The overlapping area between content and pedagogy covers the core business of teaching. It's what to teach and the best way to teach it. However, it's the third realm of technology with its overlapping areas that tends to be the most challenging for teachers.
I want to stop right there because I think that's the most important part is here when we think about marrying content and pedagogy. So like what you know as a teacher, your expertise, and then how you know are the best ways to teach it. And then using technology as a platform for those 2 really important things, okay?
Challenging for teachers.
Created using Powtoon.
All right, y'all. So if you kind of go back to those slides, and again, I'll pop those in the chat again for those of you that just popped in. Now I want you to take about 3 minutes, and this top site right here, I want you to click on it, okay? And you will be able to see the district's information on TPACK. There'll be 3 circles, pedagogy, technology, content knowledge. And I just want you to explore for a minute. What does the district want me to get from this? What are they saying are priorities on each of these 3 things and how they overlap? And so I want you to have some exposure to that. So again, 3 minutes, go. For those of you that are just coming in, I just put our slides that we're on right now again in the chat. Hey, Patricia, I'm going to throw you the slides we're looking at together in the chat, okay? Two minutes for those of us that are exploring. One minute for those of us that are exploring. All right. So as you think about that really concrete video that we just had, the district's resources that you just took a look at and your own background knowledge, right? I have a task for you. So today, using Padlet, which again is a high exposure tech tool. How many of you have used Padlet or know what I'm talking about when I say Padlet? Just a show of hands. Okay, great. All right, so using Padlet, I would like you to explain in 20 words or less. Again, explain how educators can implement TPACK using content, pedagogy, and technological tools. A shortened version of requesting that is, how would you tell another teacher about TPACK? For those of you that have not worked with Padlet before, I don't want to assume that we all have been exposed. So I'm going to do just a quick exposure. So this is Padlet, and it's a collaborative board. The only thing you have to do is click on this pink, whatever button that is, at the bottom, and you can write your name in the subject line or whatever, and then write your response here where it says write something incredible. So tell me how you would talk to another teacher about TPACK really quickly. Thank you, thank you, thank you. TPACK utilizes technology to combine the best pedagogical practices and the content. Yes, it does. Very good. Okay. Selecting the perfect appropriate tech tool for the task at hand. Yes. Teachers can use their content goals and understanding of best teaching methods to guide them in planning and intentional use of technology for instruction. Y'all might be like my AIG group. These are awesome. I love your like 20-word summaries too. They're very straight and to the point, and they've gotten to the heart of TPACK. All right. With that in mind, and again, keep throwing your answers if you're working with the Padlet. But I want to show you something. So what I just asked you to do is as simple as it gets, right? Nothing complicated there. So there's that same prompt I just gave you. Explain in 20 words or less what TPACK is. Now I want to give you another prompt, okay? In this prompt, using the same tech tool, I've asked you, I said, use Padlet this time to compare your definition and understanding of TPACK with that of another educator through the following success criteria. So you're going to choose one person to respond to. You're going to, in response, find a photo that represents the similarities between your understanding of TPACK and the person that you chose to respond to. So how is that? Choose a photo that reflects what you both think about TPACK, and then write 2 to 3 sentences on how that photo is a representation of your combined understanding of TPACK. Now, I'm not actually going to ask you to do that. I know you're already sweating over there, like, please don't make me do it. Just like our students do, because today we're going to be thinking and acting in the meta, right? Thinking about our thinking outside of the actual task. So just as a visual example, again, in that first prompt, you were just explaining something, okay? But in this second prompt, you took that response, found a photo that reflected your understanding and theirs, and then justified how that photo combined both of your understandings. Now here's us acting in the meta, okay? With thinking about both of those prompts, prompt 1 and 2, I want you to think about 2 things real quick before we worry about the red. What changed in those 2 prompts? What changed? And then what didn't change in those 2 prompts? So if you'll click on this Padlet right here, I want you to go ahead and start thinking about that. What changed in those 2 prompts and what didn't? Okay. What changed in those 2 prompts and what didn't? And then we're going to share, because I'm kind of like a share. The digital is great, but I also want to hear your voice. What changed in those 2 prompts and what didn't? And I'm going to share that, excuse me, I'm going to share that Padlet link too, so you can get right to it. So there's a direct link to the Padlet. What changed in those 2 prompts?
We didn't just have to state a definition or an opinion. We had to compare and contrast it to someone else and then think outside the box to sort of prove or justify our thinking.
Yeah, so the actual verb changed, right? Like one you were explaining, one you were comparing, and that involved a whole lot more, right? So obviously that was a change, something different. Somebody tell me, or write whatever, what makes you more comfortable. What were some things that didn't change in those two things? What did not change?
We focused on the purpose of TPACK. The content was still the same.
Content was the same. The content did not change, right? You were both focusing on the same content. What about the technology? Did the tech tool change?
No.
No, what tech tool did we use both times?
Padlet.
Right? And Padlet, again, is a high exposure tech tool. A ton of you have already seen this. So thinking about your kids, how can you vitalize these high exposure tech tools and think about the way that you're changing the way you're writing your assessment to use it in ways? All right. So moving on. All right, so here's kind of the meat of where I want to go with this today. We're thinking about using your high exposure tech tools, again, like Nearpod, Padlet, etc. There's some things I want you to think about when you are writing your assignment, okay? When you're writing your assignments, okay? The first is evidence of the verb, okay? So this is really important when you're talking about writing success criteria in your assignments. How are the students going to show you? How are they going to show you that they've explained? How are they going to show you that they've evaluated? How are they going to show you that they've analyzed? So being really mindful when you're writing assignments, what's the criteria? How are they going to show you? Okay. Another is student choice. So I think it's really important when we're offering our children or giving an assignment, are we offering our children tech choice? Especially because they do have so much exposure, right? So if we're giving them these products and they're using them with daily strategies, they might attach themselves to one over the other. Which one's going to empower them most to share the content knowledge that they have? So student choice is huge. This is my personal fave, where my heart is opportunities for multi-literacy. So again, you might use lots of different tech tools in your classroom, and some might be better than others when you're thinking about executing a specific task. But when we're talking about assessing, okay, I would really advise that you use tech tools that have opportunities for multi-literacy. So what I mean by that is get beyond the child's just writing or reading, okay? We need to take our expanded understanding of literacy and give opportunities to show literacy in graphics, in video, in drawing, in music expression, in the way that they've chosen hyperlinks, like what was their mindset in choosing a specific website that reflects their understanding. So when you choose tech tools or give them choices in assignments, are these tech tools ones that allow all learners to connect? The other thing is fluency. So again, you might be doing a lot of exposure with different tech tools, but I wouldn't give a child an assignment with a tech tool that they started a day ago, right? You might want to expose them to lots of different things, but not necessarily assess them with something they're not fluent with. And then the last point I would like you to think about is accessibility of tools. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So these are two tools that I use. One I know is high exposure, right? Google Slides is pretty high exposure. But another one that I use a lot in K-5 is Adobe Spark, and it's very similar to Google Slides, same sort of setup. But when we're talking about tool accessibility, so what I'm about to show you will both have to do with a student putting in audio, using their voice to tell you something, right? Now, what's interesting about Google Slides, that's a high exposure tech tool. But when they have to put in their voice, they have to find insert, they have to go to the drop down to use audio, and they have to pull from an audio file that they've already saved. Now, if you're thinking about a K-5 child, that's quite a bit for them to be doing independently. Whereas Adobe Spark will allow them to do the same thing, use audio and storytelling to tell you something, and they have to click a red button. So just being mindful when we're creating assignments, thinking about the accessibility of tools is a really important thing to consider. Okay. So, sorry, I want to back the train up real quick. One of the conversations I want to have real quick, and here, excuse me, 2 seconds. One of the conversations I want to have real quick is when we think about student choice and opportunities for multiliteracy and exposure, like lots of fluency before they're assigned a task. So again, student choice, multiliteracy, and fluency. How do you think this connects to equity? Student choice, opportunities for multiliteracy, and fluency. How do you think this connects to equity for our students? I'll give you a minute to think about it, but I'd love to hear some people share. All right, I'll ask a more direct question. If we're thinking about students of privilege, okay, students of privilege, are they going to have somebody at home to help them with a tech tool? If we're thinking about students furthest from justice who do not experience privilege, will they have somebody at home to help them with a tech tool? It's possible, but what's most likely? The most likely case is that they probably won't have somebody to support them. So when we think about that, we're thinking about the fact that that child is probably going to have to be in the classroom when they're doing this assessment in order to get as much support from us as possible. But we're one person. So if we want to set that child up who's furthest from justice for success, think about the importance of having fluency in a tech tool so that they have the opportunity to get as much efficacy from that experience as possible. The other is, if we think about students furthest from justice, we also think about maybe our struggling readers, our struggling writers, because again, they have the least support probably. So if we expand our understanding of multiliteracy, again, outside of traditional reading and writing, can they tell us about the content? Can they depict the content in a drawing? Can they find a video that they know reflects the content? And so we've just empowered that child to talk about their content knowledge in a different way. And we still get that their understanding is as concrete as the person beside them. Now, granted, that's not me saying disregard their need for reading and writing, but it also gives us a new mindset around how we can empower students furthest from justice. Any questions on that? And again, student choice is huge for all students. All right. So keeping all of that in mind, pay attention because this is a model assignment. You're going to have to do one on your own in breakout rooms in just a minute. Okay. So again, this is a model assignment. And this assignment takes in context all of the things we just talked about. Writing with an expectation of criteria, like how they are going to match the verb. Writing an assignment that includes choice. Writing an assignment that includes opportunities for multiliteracy, thinking about students furthest from justice. Making sure that we're assuming that the tools we're going to be picking are ones they're fluent in, and then accessibility. All right, so in this case, the assignment is, for your final assignment on this standard, which will be analyzing an author's use of visual and multimedia tools. So that's what they're going to be expected to do, analyzing an author's use of visual and multimedia tools. I would like you, the student, to analyze one text from Wonderopolis. So they're going to be analyzing a text from this website here. And then from that text, I want you to use either Flipgrid or Adobe Spark to discuss the following: images, audio, video, and any other multimedia tools the author might have used. Again, success criteria, because I want to know that there's going to be evidence of the verb. So I included that success criteria. So I said here, student, choose 3 multimedia tools that the author used, and then explain how each tool affects the overall text. Also, explain how the text might be different if these tools were not available. Okay? So help me out here, anybody, somebody. Does this assignment include an element of choice? All right, what is it? What was the element of choice? Sorry, I see some people chatting. Go ahead, Amy.
As was said, which tools that you wanted to write about? They can choose which multimedia tools that the author used that they want to focus on.
Yes, yes. I'm glad that you mentioned that one, Amy, because the first instinct a lot were for people to go, oh, well, the choice is they can use Flipgrid or Adobe Spark, and that is an element of choice. But the other element there was that they didn't have to use every multimedia tool that the author included. They could choose 3 that they thought were most impactful. Any other elements of choice? Okay. Now what about opportunities for multiliteracy? I'm thinking about students who are furthest from justice. Are they going to be able to talk about an author's use of multimedia tools outside of writing? Will they have options? Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with the chat. Yes, they can record themselves. Yes, they can. So they'll have an oral option. I'm not sure how many of you were familiar with Adobe Spark, but in Adobe Spark, they can also include video that they find. They can do an image search. They can do audio. So there are multiliteracy opportunities. Okay. What about evidence of the verb? Is there an expectation of them showing you how they analyzed? Will that happen? And then where did that take place? Like in the assignment, how are you sure that this child's going to show you that they analyzed? Where did that take place in the assignment? Yes, they're asked to explain it, and they can't explain it unless they've analyzed it first, right? Anybody else have input on that one? Specifically, and somebody already mentioned it, like the explanation portion, but thinking about, again, the success criteria. Okay? All right. So now I'm going to pass the torch to you. I'll do a thorough job of explaining and give you a chance to ask questions before we do it. So here is what I'm going to ask you to do today. So I want you to take this standard. So this is the standard right here. Evaluate the costs and benefits of spending, borrowing, and saving. What's the verb? Somebody tell me the verb.
Evaluate.
Yes, evaluate. There's your verb. So somewhere in your assignment, you're gonna have to think about how are they showing you that there's been evaluation that's taken place. Okay. So you're taking that standard that we just talked about, and you're gonna use 2 tech tools to write an assignment. So you're going to be asking them to write an assignment based on that standard, and using at least 2 tech tools. Somebody answer for me, why would I use at least 2 tech tools? Choice. Yes. Woo. Yes, choice. And you can do more than 2, but again, we want to make sure that these are ones that they're fluent in. Okay, so you might say to yourself, I don't know if they're like super fluent in more than these 2. That'd be all right. Offer them choice on as many as you know they're going to be confident in using. Now, all of these are what I would consider high exposure tech tools. You might be saying, Rachel, that I don't know a lot of these. It's okay. That's why I've only asked you to use 2. Okay. So as you're writing your assignment in just a minute in your breakout groups, and you're thinking about writing an assignment for this standard using tech tools, I want you to think about these things again. How are they going to be meeting the verb? Is there choice? Have you given them choice in your assignment? And does the tech tool that you ask them to use offer multi-literacy opportunities? So the only thing they're going to be able to do right, or can they get beyond that? So think about students furthest from justice, right? So in just a minute, when I send you to your breakout groups, this is where I want you to write the actual assignment. So you can have somebody who's like your scribe for the group. And when we come back, we will discuss what you thought. Any questions before that actually takes place? Any questions? We're all good. Okay. I'm going to send you to breakout rooms. They're going to be great. I'm really excited. Okay. Hey, everybody. So I hope you had enough time to at least get a critical discussion going, even if you didn't have necessarily it written in a particular format. And so if I could get some sort of leader from each group to at least share kind of what your vision was on an assessment, including choice, multiliteracy, evidence of the verb, exposure, and etc. I would love to hear people kind of talk about that. So anybody, don't hesitate.
I can report for our group. We
Go ahead, Diana.
had the idea that maybe this is a partner project where we have 2 students who can like debate costs and benefits for these things. So our assignment was like that they would decide on some purchase that they're trying to make, and then that they would discuss these 3 things and how they would relate to like getting them to that, be able to make a purchase. And we chose Adobe Spark and Seesaw as the platforms to have them choose to share their discussion and conclusions.
Diana, excuse me, how did your group decide that you were going to see evidence that they have evaluated?
Through the idea is that through the students' discussion, the 2 partners' discussion, and then we were kind of leaving it open of how else they wanted to show their discussion and conclusions is how we worded it. Like, so they could give us a little written piece or a table or the video of the two partners. Yeah.
Wonderful. Y'all, A+, 5 stars. Okay, another group would like to share. Thank you, Diana. The other groups.
Trisha, you're gonna be our sports.
I'm sorry, Doris, say that again.
I said you're gonna be our spokesman or what?
I can do it, no problem.
Okay,
So,
Trisha.
we chose, or we decided that the student choice would be, they can choose if they want to do like Christmas shopping, back to school shopping, or grocery shopping. And that they would have the 2 tech tools that they're using would be Google Sheet, where they kept their budget. So they'd be given a budget that they have to stay, or that they have to try to stay within. And then they would record what they spent on the Google Sheet. And it would like automatically sum it for them, potentially. And then they would do a flip grid that is a reflection on whether they were able to stay on budget or not, and what challenges they presented, or they were presented with, and also like the benefits of, if they stayed under budget and let's say they had $20 extra, well, what could they do with that? Or if they had gone in the red, then, what does that mean about where's that money coming from? So
Okay.
That's what we come up.
All right, and Elijah, I was just listening to you talk, and I was thinking about each little, critical lens we talked about earlier, and you covered all of them. So awesome job. I heard choice. I heard multi-literacy opportunities in your tech tools that you had given. I heard the evidence of the verb that they had evaluated. So very good. Were there any other groups that I didn't cover? Any other groups? Any reflections, y'all? I would love to get feedback, and I'm the kind of person who cannot hurt my feelings. Any particular part of the presentation that you said, this really spoke to me, or I would have liked to have heard more about this, anything that just resonated? Again, chat or out loud is fine. As you all are working on that, I am going to go ahead and cast the reflection form for today, so you can get credit for being in this session. And I'll throw that in the chat as well. So guys, there is the reflection form that I just put in the chat, so you can receive credit. And so I covered all my bases. I know that the district also wanted us to kind of announce with you guys right after this session, right? Yeah, 4 o'clock. These folks here, from most of them are from school of medicine, Duke, et cetera, medical experts are going to be talking a little bit about COVID, and I guess just kind of like what to know and how to contextualize kind of what's happening with the virus, if you have any interest in going. Yes. All righty. When you are ready and you've given some awesome feedback and done your reflection, you're good to go. Thank you for coming today, and I hope it was worth your time.